According to sports writer Jeffrey Standen, there are 4,256 reasons to vote Pete Rose into the Hall of Fame. There is one reason to keep him out. Pete Rose was a professional baseball player for both the Cincinnati Reds and the Philadelphia Phillies, and after his playing career was over, went on to manage the Cincinnati Reds. Unfortunately for him, though, he was caught gambling, and so he was given a lifetime ban from Major League Baseball. This lifetime ban includes having his name put on the permanently ineligible list for baseball's Hall of Fame. It is unjust for not only Pete Rose but for baseball to keep him away from the Hall of Fame. I will demonstrate that Pete Rose should be admitted to the Hall of Fame, and that admitting him will not damage the integrity of baseball. The number that Standen referenced, 4,256, represents the number of hits that Pete Rose accumulated over his playing career. That number has been unmatched by any other player since, and broke a record that was set 50 years before that by one of baseball's all-time greats, Ty Cobb. And the number one reason to keep him out corresponds with the one rule that Pete Rose broke, baseball's famous Rule Number 21, which prohibits any kind of gambling from baseball. Pete Rose, though he was caught gambling, I believe that should not be enough to keep him out of the Hall of Fame. For after all, if he is able to hold the record for the most hits in baseball, there's no reason that should not be honored. If Pete Rose is accepted, no harm will be done. After all, it is hard to see a reason not to give this man a plaque in the Hall of Fame, because the role of the History Museum is to educate, according to the president of the Hall of Fame, Jeffrey Idelson. The premise is to inform, not to direct people to think one way or the other. Having Rose in the Hall of Fame would be a positive change for baseball, recognize the game's leading hitter. The reason Rule Number 26 exists is because of the 1919 World Series. The Chicago White Sox were heavy favorites to win, but somehow ended up losing to, ironically, the Cincinnati Reds. Now that it was so unthinkable, so inconceivable that the White Sox were to lose, that people started asking questions, thinking that the only way this could have happened is if the White Sox lost on purpose. As it turns out, that's exactly what happened. Gambling was involved, games were thrown, and 8 players were banned for life from Major League Baseball. So Rule Number 21 was established, prohibiting any sort of gambling from the game of baseball, and the precedent was set, a lifetime ban. Now the difference is between the 1919 World Series and Pete Rose is that Pete Rose always bet on his team to win, making it more competitive. In most cases where gambling is involved with sports, it becomes less competitive. Only one side is trying to win, where the other side is trying to lose. But what Pete Rose did, both as a player and a manager, was making the game more competitive. By adding money into the mix, there's more at stake than just winning or losing. So one would think that by adding money as an incentive to win, that a player would try harder, or a manager would try harder to win, by maybe taking more risks, thus making the game more competitive. Some Hall of Fame members are accepted despite taking measures to make the game less competitive. One large example is users of performance-enhancing drugs. Now the reason that this is a hot topic in baseball is because using these drugs will make a player have an unfair advantage over the other team, an unnatural advantage. And so most people consider the use of steroids to be cheating. However, the records are still held, and they are still admitted into the Hall of Fame. Classic examples being Mark McGwire and Barry Bonds, though he has yet to be in the Hall of Fame. It is unlikely that he will be kept out. The final reason that I believe adding Pete Rose to the Hall of Fame will not damage the integrity of the game of baseball is because the Hall of Fame and Major League Baseball are two separate entities. Yes, the Hall of Fame does place players on the permanently ineligible list if they are banned from Major League Baseball, but that's a rule that is very loose. So it's a different It's one thing to ban a player or a manager from baseball. Most people would be okay if Pete Rose never managed another game in his life. It's another thing, though, to accept him into the Hall of Fame. This would be a completely different issue. Instead of allowing him to come back into baseball, this would be honoring the accomplishments that he already created and that he cannot further. Honoring these accomplishments would be a huge change for baseball, considering that no one else has been able to do what he did. According to the New York Times writer Michael Powell, there's his Cincinnati Reds uniform, number 14, already in the Hall of Fame. There's a video of his 4,192nd hit, which broke the record of Ty Cobb. There is a discussion of Rose's gambling, replete with the smart use of social media and dueling quotes. So is it just one major leap to add his plaque along with these other honors of his accomplishments? Therefore, this is why I believe that accepting Pete Rose into the Hall of Fame will do no harm to Major League Baseball.